Now, how do we save ourselves from sins? And the Shaykh says in his Malfudat, he says that if someone asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for refuge from sins, then he or she is safe from sin. And we have an example of this in the person of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. That when he was given an invitation for sinning, he immediately said, Ma'adallah. Immediately, he sought the refuge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And consequently, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him from sinning. And even today, if someone with sincerity, with the sincerity of their heart, says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, in those moments where shaitan and your nafs are just inviting you towards sin and are saying that, you know, just don't worry, just this once, just commit this sin just this once. And if in that moment you say, Ma'adallah, Ya Allah, oh Allah, save me from sinning. And in this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely save you. And there's another example that the Shaykh gives about how we can save ourselves from sinning. He says that if you go to someone's house and they've kept a dog, and every time you try to approach the door of this house, the dog runs towards you in order to bite you. Now there's three things that could happen. Number one, if you're going to that person's house and you see the dog, you can turn back. Number two, you can jump on the dog and you can try to confront the dog, try to battle the dog. And thirdly, you can simply call upon the master of the house to control the dog. Similarly, the Shaykh says that without tashbih, we can say that shaitan is a dog from the dogs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if someone wants to be saved from this dog, then call upon the master of everything, the master of the heavens and the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save you. And Rabia Basriya, rahimahullah ta'ala, used to make a very, very beautiful dua in tahajjud. And she used to say that, oh Allah, you have held back the heavens from falling on the earth, so Allah, save me so that shaitan doesn't overtake me and shaitan doesn't fall upon me. And then the Shaykh says, you know, how are du'as like this accepted? These kinds of du'as that Sayyidah Rabia made. And the way to get these du'as to be accepted, the way to get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save you from sinning, is that every single day when you wake up, the first thought that should arise in your heart is, oh Allah, I have a deep desire in my heart that this day I will not disobey you. Oh Allah, this day I will not descend into sin. And if you make this dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single morning when you wake up, and if you make this firm intention in your heart, then inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help will descend down. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's assistance will come to you. And another thing that is recommended by the Shaykh is that if you ever feel like sinning, if the desire for sinning overtakes you, make wudu, pray 2 rakats, and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, it's very, very difficult for me to leave sins. And oh Allah, I am giving myself over to you completely. Oh Allah, you are the only one who can save me from sins. And because of your giving yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save you from the sins. And this is the easy way for us to be able to leave sin. And this is also why it's very, very important in our silsila to keep rabita with the Shaykh. Absolutely critical that we keep rabita with the Shaykh. And what that means is that you stay in touch with the Shaykh through email or through SMS or, you know, by phone or Skype or, you know, whatever the method may be. Or for example, you know, we have these weekly majalis, we have these weekly suhbas. but to maintain a very, very strong rabita with the Shaykh. In order that you inform the Shaykh about what are the spiritual ailments that are afflicting you. What are the spiritual problems that you're suffering from? Because if you do that, inshallah, the Shaykh will invariably include you in his du'as. And so in those moments when the Shaykh is making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if for example that day or that week you had reminded the Shaykh that, yeah Shaykh, there's this problem that I'm suffering from. For example, I just can't control my anger. Or, I just can't control my gaze. It's very difficult for me to lower my gaze. Shaykh, I'm looking at things on the internet that I shouldn't be looking at. Or Shaykh, I'm full of takabbur, I'm full of ujub, I'm full of arrogance. I'm a very, very arrogant person. And if you let the Shaykh know about this, subhanAllah, the Shaykh's heart will be just really inclined towards making dua for you during those times of acceptance of dua. And, this is actually the reason why we're on this suluk, actually. The purpose of this suluk is not to experience some strange kafiyat, to be able to see strange things, or to be able to fly, or to be able to walk on water. This is not the suluk, actually. This is not the purpose of the suluk. But the purpose of the suluk is that even the effects of sin are removed from every single drop of our blood. That the effect of sin is removed from every single atom of our existence. This is actually the objective of suluk. And this is not something which we can't attain. The Imam of our tariqah, the Imam of our silsila, Imam al-Rabbani, Shaykh Ahmed Sirhindi, rahimahullah, said something really amazing. He said that there were such pure people in our ummah that for 20 years the angels were not able to write any sin. Allahu Akbar kabira. Imagine this. That for 20 years the angels were not able to write any sin. And this was, subhanAllah, the hal of the people in the past. And subhanAllah, this is something which is completely acceptable. Because, you see, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to you, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, leave the sins which are in your zahir and leave the sins which are in your batin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not make you mukallaf about anything which you don't have the capacity to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not make you responsible for doing something which you don't have the capacity to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not make it obligatory upon you to do anything which you don't have the capacity to do. Every single amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and every single amr of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith, these are things that are achievable. And so you have to have a firm conviction that despite my weaknesses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me the capacity to obey this commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is to leave every single sin which is zahir and every single sin which is batin. Allahu Akbar kabira. And usually what we've seen is that it's usually these one or two major sins that every single Saalik is really involved in. Sometimes, it's anger. Someone has a very, very difficult time controlling their anger. And this is the stumbling block for them to move forward on their path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes it's lust, because of which, they're not able to move forward on this path. And the example of this is just like if you're trying to build a building, and you might have seen that when people are building a building, in order to connect one brick with another brick, they need to put a layer of cement between the two bricks. But if your brick is covered by dirt, is covered by mud, is covered by filth, even if the builder tries to put the cement to join your two bricks, the cement will not be able to join properly. And so even if the Shaykh is making dua for you and is giving you his spiritual attention, his tawajjuh, even then, until and unless you remove that layer of dirt between your brick and the brick of the Shaykh will not be able to do something for you. So you have to make a firm intention. We have to make a firm intention today that now that, alhamdulillah, we have done tawbah, now that we have made this commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will make a firm commitment to give up sins. And I'd recommend every single one of you to do this, is to keep a secret diary and make a list today after this session. Make a list of all the sins that you're committing. Write them down. And then, over the next few months, one by one, start to get rid of those sins from your life. And inshallah, you'll see that as the sins exit from your life, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take a firm foothold in your heart, inshallah. So let us make a firm intention today that we're going to leave sins and inshallah, as we move forward with the next sessions, we'll cover some of the other topics that are very, very critical to our spiritual development. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the opportunity to act upon everything that we've heard. Now,